This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. We have a multitude of insurance needs. We do. Indeed, we do. And because of that, you need somebody to really keep it organized, make sure you're fully insured, and also make sure they do everything they can to save you money. That's big. We work with the suit. He's cheap, and he's all about saving money. Usually it's not ours. All right. Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. We bring in the outstanding, the fabulous Neil Coulong. Sir, welcome.
As always, it's my great pleasure to be here. I hope you guys are doing well.
Happy holidays, by the way, to you and your great family.
You as well. I'm glad we could get one in to commemorate the season here.
Absolutely. And it's we knew that the Steelers, when they hit the stretch run, they would be a few more football version of minefields for them to navigate. And the possibility was there that it may be difficult to do. A, are we seeing evidence of that? And B, why?
I think you have a team that, I don't want to say overachieved. I mean, you play your schedule, but let's be real. At the very least, in the game itself, within the fourth quarter, they won a couple that were pretty on the fence. I mean, they didn't necessarily have, a 60+% chance of winning. That Washington game, that looked like it was dead. The first Ravens game, the one they won, didn't look like they had a chance at that. They built up the equity that I figured that they were going to spend. I mean, I thought at the beginning of the year, I didn't think Philadelphia would be as good a team as they are. But then we saw them lose this week as well. So who knows week to week. Baltimore followed by Kansas City on a short week. Baltimore on the road, then Kansas City at home. I don't think it gets worse than that. I don't know if anybody had a worse two-game stretch in the NFL. Yeah. And the Steelers really don't win short-week games anymore. They haven't in a while. I wouldn't feel all that optimistic about this one. If you look at it at a 10,000-foot level, for them to have what seems to be the yearly tradition of a Mike Tomlin December 3-game losing streak, this one was probably the most likely for it to have happened. Which is funny to me because last year when they had it, it was against three teams they should have beat. Should have been a 3-game winning streak. That's so right. Maybe they're paying the price and kind of, regressing to the mean here. But I think, I want to look at it, 10-6 going into the final game of the season against Cincinnati isn't a bad spot for them to be. Also, I think it's instructive to point out that next man up, whatever cliche you want to use, when George Pickens is not on the field, they don't have anybody to replace George Pickens. It's not a schematic thing, which is really what next man up means. Right. You need to be ready to handle the assignment that you're given. There isn't anybody on their roster that's going to do what George Pickens can do. I don't know if you watched it at all, but T.J. Watt was not even close to 100%, not even close to 80% in that game. Very little impact against Baltimore. Deshaun Elliott out of nowhere is a Pro Bowl level safety. If you want to get on the Steelers for not having a Pro Bowl backup safety, then okay, but they don't have that, and their run defense is suffering tremendously with the losses that they have up front, and offensively we've known how thin their receiving core was. Even when it's at 100%, it's one of the worst total units in the league. So it's important to look at it in the proper context. But at the end of the day, should we be evaluating this as a Super Bowl team? I don't think I ever really did. So to be honest, this isn't surprising. And I've all but already given them a loss against Kansas City. I don't think anybody would expect them to win that game. You put all those things together, they earned a playoff spot. They didn't back into it. It didn't come down to tiebreakers in the last weekend of the season. At the same time, though, they are beaten up pretty badly, and they need to get guys healthy if they're going to make anything of a competitive stand in the playoffs, which really would be a major takeaway going into this offseason, which is not what we've seen over the last couple of years. I think they have a shot at it this year. At full strength, they can beat Baltimore in Baltimore. I think they can compete against the top teams. But, yeah, I mean, with this current run, I think they lost the division. That doesn't out surprise me, and I don't think that it ruins the season either.
Well, see, that's what I understand always saying next man up. I understand that because somebody has to play, and you don't want, in other words, you're trying to portray the confidence in whomever's going to play. So that part I understand. But there's a reason the other guy's starting. There is a reason why the other guy plays a ton of plays. Because they're better than the guy that's replacing him. It's simple as that. I mean, it's not that difficult to figure out.
Yeah, in this particular case, too, the gap between the starter and the backup is pretty significant. I mean, it's not close. And on top of that, if you want to illustrate it even more, I mean, you can't take T.J. Watt off the field, even when he's at probably 60%. But that means you've got a guy that's barely over half of what he normally is. And we're talking about a guy who's expected to put up Hall of Fame stats in every game. Watt wasn't a factor in that game at all. I think he had one pressure that I saw. Lamar Jackson was unchecked and unchallenged within the pocket. That was just passing. I don't think he had a great passing game. Running the ball, Derrick Henry probably had the easiest, 160 yards, whatever it was, that he's had in his career. They really didn't get after him up front. They lost the line of scrimmage pretty badly, and the Ravens are not known as a dominant offensive line individually. They played very well as a scheme. They knew how to attack Pittsburgh where they were weakest, which was in multiple spots. Their linebackers proved to really not be all that effective without the help and the cover up front. And it reminded me a lot of 3-4 seasons ago, I think it was, 2021 it might have been, where they gave up like 180 yards in 3 straight games on the ground, something like that, when they had injuries. That was back when they had something called Daniel Archibong starting for them because of injuries. That depth on the defensive line, the value of that later in a year is significant, and the Steelers lost a little bit of it. They've got to figure out a way to get it back. Larry Ogunjobi has missed some time. Watt is not 100% healthy, like I said. They have to find ways to patch that kind of thing up if they want to have a real chance at making a run late into January. Obviously, it's not. They don't have time to do that now, provided they can't get some guys healthy and get them back on the field and playing. I think they can come back to a pretty good level, but long term, they're going to have to find some realistic depth, which I think they've been building because it's a lot better off than it was the last couple of years. But it's not quite there yet, and I think we saw that on the field on Saturday.
Look, I know it was the Chicago Bears, but you talk about depth. I mean, Detroit's depth on defense has been tested beyond words. They figured out a way to win that game, and I know it's the Bears. I understand that. And I have a good friend, by the way, who's a big Bears fan, but probably gets it more than anybody else. But they've got a 2-game advantage now in Philadelphia because they have the tiebreaker. Because they won, Philadelphia lost. I mean, in some ways, I think what Detroit's doing here down the stretch is really kind of amazing and tells you a lot about them, doesn't it?
You know what it reminds me of is the Green Bay Packers in 2010, their Super Bowl run.
Yeah.
They had similar challenges. It wasn't as bad. I don't know how many teams have put 22 guys on injured reserve and won a top seed heading into the playoffs, which is what Detroit's kind of on pace to do right now. The Packers lost 5 or 6 defensive starters, I think, at various points throughout the year. Going into the final stretch of the season, they had to basically overhaul their entire defense. And if you recall, that was the year they were transitioning out of a 4-3 under Dom Capers into a 3-4 defense. The genius behind what they did was really to use their schematic, their personnel weakness as a schematic strength. Because on one hand, you don't play the game in a vacuum. It's not always about. I mean, the individuals competing really have a one-on-one matchup against somebody. That's just football. But from a schematic standpoint, it's using different guys in different ways. And the Packers were forced to face that problem. They had to solve that problem. And the solution of it is something that other teams haven't seen them do. So in that, you have a tactical advantage over your opponent. And I think that's a lot of what Detroit is able to do right now. When you have, the talent of a coaching staff largely comes down to how well the players play, right? And that is you putting them in position to be successful. They're not always successful with that. It's not always because the coach screwed up. Some guys, guys just lose sometimes. But what Detroit has, I think, is that chemistry where guys have a certain level of versatility, and they're willing to buy into what the coaches are telling them to do. And for me, one, this is a big part of why I think Aaron Glenn's going to be a head coach in the NFL sooner rather than later. Yeah. But two, it shows the remarkable character of the team. And that's not something, in my opinion, that you attribute to any one person. That's a lot of people. And that's a lot of people probably giving the same credit to one another. And that's what makes Detroit so difficult to beat. That they're a team. Look, plain and simple, Dan Campbell screwed up pretty bad against Buffalo. That's a bad mistake. We've seen Dan Campbell make really bad mistakes in games.
Yes. Yes.
They don't complain. They don't, kind of cry. I would, not to rub salt in the wound of your friend, but I think that's what you see a lot of the Chicago Bears doing. Blame the coach as much as you want. You have a quarterback on that team that does whatever he wants to do, and it's creating problems. And it seems like there's animosity between the players and the coaching staff. They're not buying into what they're being told to do. But they face a challenge and they back away. Detroit is just mowing through it like it's nothing, like it's all a part of the plan. Yeah. That's a remarkable team. That's a really difficult team to beat. The Packers ended up winning the Super Bowl. I think they were a 6th seed. They beat Pittsburgh, and the Packers were favored in that game.
Yep.
That's how well they were playing. And defensively, what you really saw from them is they took the ball away. Detroit has had some rough defensive games for sure, but they find a way to get the job done, drive to drive. Whatever it is that needs to happen, they tend to make it happen, and that's why you got to look at them as a favorite in a stacked NFC. That's a really difficult conference. Whoever wins that is going to go through a lot just to get to the Super Bowl, let alone taking on whoever's coming from the AFC.
So with that, I will follow up because I'm going to go to your hometown team, a team that could be a wild card team with 13 wins, the Minnesota Vikings. What makes the Vikings a winning team this year, despite the fact that they had some offseason changes?
A couple things that I really enjoy about the Vikings. First off, Kevin O'Connell, I think, is the most underrated coach in the NFL, and I said that this offseason. Yep. People don't understand what he did with Kirk Cousins and where Kirk Cousins was prior to his injury last year. He was legitimately playing at an MVP level. And to have Sam Darnold, king journeyman, king bust draft pick, come in and play at that same level. In other words, they didn't lose anything. It's just, KOC had that unit at a borderline playoff level last season, and they had plumbers and firemen playing quarterback for them. If you look and see the level of talent, Sean Mannion, the one guy, I don't remember his name, the kid from BYU, I think he was undrafted. They gave him a half Reed. They gave him a half to play, and he was that bad. Yeah. Without Cousins, they fought to 8-9 wins, I think it was, something like that. A very competitive unit. They went out, and they don't really have any draft assets to utilize this coming year. They put everything into free agency because they had to get up to get a quarterback. They got a highly rated quarterback, but had to get that first year with a veteran out of the way first. And where they're playing, they're in a rebuilding year. Kevin O'Connell, my opinion, is coach of the year. I don't think he'll win that, but for whatever it's worth, I think it's fair to say he's clearly one of the best coaches in the game. On top of that, the way that he proves it, watch the first quarter of every Vikings game. You'll see a team that basically dominates its opponent on both sides of the ball. I don't think there is a team that comes out better prepared for their opponent than the Vikings each week. Now, if you really get into it, you talk to the top minds as far as the NFL game goes, the first quarter is largely scripted.
Right.
They kind of know what's coming, and it's us versus you. These are the things that we're going to do. We're going to base the rest of what we're going to do for the rest of the game on what happens within this first quarter. And teams have a very difficult time stopping the Vikings on their first drive, game in and game out. Defensively, they often get takeaways. They often get sacks. They jump out to a 7-0, 10-0, 10-3 lead often within the first quarter. They did it against the Lions in the game that they lost, which is another side here. Keep in mind, the Vikings 13 wins, and the Packers are 12. Right. I'm willing to bet one of the three NFC North teams is going to the Super Bowl. It's going to be one of them, just being one of the best divisions we've seen in recent memory. The Vikings, I think, are every bit as good as the Lions. They don't have kind of that feel-good story. They're not maybe as entertaining to watch as the prolific Lions offense is, but the Vikings are so good all around. You completely forget the fact that this team really kind of needed this year to turn around to get past Cousins' cap number, which, by the way, people that suggested Kirk Cousins should stay in Minnesota at $40 million a year, that worked out well. They're supposed to be for next year and beyond. That was their team. They weren't going to play McCarthy. This was the year that they were going to build, put a realistic quarterback option out there. And I don't know what to tell you. If you don't think that Sam Darnold is not a top 5 MVP candidate, you're crazy. Darnold has played that well throughout the year. It all comes down to what the Vikings have done internally. They've rebuilt a pretty broken ship for a while there, and their best years are still ahead of them. They get cap space next year. They don't have any draft picks. After that, they have cap space and draft picks. Imagine what they're going to be. If McCarthy is anywhere near where Darnold is, which may or may not happen, we don't know. Right. You're looking at a team that's going to compete at a very high level over the next 3 years, and it's completely realistic to say the Vikings could be in the Super Bowl this year. The Vikings-Bills Super Bowl. That's what everybody wants, except me. I've got business interests with the Bills. I've got personal interests with the Vikings. It'd be a rough game for me personally, but it would be fun to see one of those two teams win.
No, again, the talent, Addison, Jefferson, Hawkinson, that they have. It's almost like a lot of people don't seem to know about the Vikings because they're not the Packers are darlings because they're from Green Bay. Detroit, great story because of last year. It seems like the Vikings are that team in the NFC that's flying under the radar, and there isn't a single team out there who wants to play them.
I agree completely, and throw in Philadelphia to that as well. It's like the Vikings are the team. Keep in mind, you watched it was just a brilliant football game. The Lions and Vikings, the first time they played in Minneapolis, that was a great game. Very well played on both sides. The Lions won on a last-second field goal, 27-24, I think it was, which I think is a pretty balanced final score between two really good teams. That's probably about what you would expect. There's no reason to think Minnesota can't beat Detroit. They've beaten Green Bay. They can beat Philadelphia, but you're exactly right. The other three teams are the ones that get far more of the national attention. Everything you hear about Minnesota is, oh, my God, Sam Darnold is doing this. Look at the defensive side of the ball. Look at what they're getting from players that you've never heard of before. Andrew Van Ginkel, you didn't know who he was.
Nope.
Blake Cashman, you kind of maybe knew who he was. You mentioned Hawkinson. You got to see Hawkinson play in college. I'm not sure I've ever enjoyed watching a college player more than I did watching Hawkinson play. It's just a phenomenal three-down tight end. They get so much out of every guy that they have. They've lost to Neil Hunter and signed Grenard for less than what Hunter got. The front office has made excellent moves there, and these are moves that you didn't necessarily think would pay off as much as it has in year one. But at the end of the day, they are behind Detroit on a last-second field goal from against a Lions team that was in the NFC Championship game last year. Frankly, should have won that game. They learned a lot from that. They've been a great team over the last 2 years. The Vikings are the upstart, and they're right there with them. So I'm excited. I think the NFC is going to really be where the action is this year. I think they're probably, whoever it is that's coming out, I think they're the ones that are going to win the Super Bowl. Whoever gets to the Super Bowl from the NFC will have beaten two excellent teams, at least, in my opinion, in the divisional and the conference championship games. I think that can be Minnesota. It's certainly possible. They're right up there.
Well, I'll tell you, we're always thrilled. Holiday blessings on this show. For more than a decade, you've been one of them. Thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. Happy holidays, guys. Hope you enjoy it.
Neil Coulong. And half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
The holidays are a time of year to celebrate and reflect. Reflect on the past year, a year filled with challenges and uncertainty. Uncertainty that bred resilience and hope. Hope for healing, change, new beginnings, and unity. United as one people, one community, by one mission, to safeguard and protect what matters most. From all of us at Purdy Insurance, we wish you health, happiness, and joy this holiday season and success in the new year.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Brewers Outlet. All right. It's the holidays. Brewers Outlet gift card. You're looking around going, I need something. I got to find something. All right. It's fine. It's okay. You'll find something. Brewers Outlet gift card. That'll be your go-to. All right. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Yes. And not only that, you heard earlier Corey excited, talking about the fact that they can now have some add-ins. Yes. High Noon. Now, these are ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon, Crown Royal, Jack Daniels. Wow. They got the license. They're allowed to do it. So go on over. Perfect timing. And the pickle bar, led by my personal favorites, the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. The Penn State women's volleyball team yesterday won the national title. Penn State's 8th. First one since 2014. Katie Schumacher-Cawley becomes the first woman in the history of women's volleyball to be the head coach of a national championship team. Katie played on the 1999 national championship team with Lauren Cacciamani and others. And that was Russ Rose's first national title. Well, she now coaches this national title. Izzy Stark, Jess Merzick. I thought Hannah Kemper was outstanding. Hannah pounded the ball in all this. Caroline Jaravicius, they showed some shots of Joe in the crowd. I don't think the announcers identified him. I think it would be a long shot if they knew who he was. What?
I did see him interviewed after the match.
Okay, he was interviewed. I didn't watch the post. I don't watch any of the post-game stuff. After a while, you're like, yeah, whatever. You just like, I talked to Joe. Joe was at practice. This was in October. And at this point, they were rolling. I think they had that one streak where they won 14 in a row. And that was during that streak where you kind of like, I knew, they'd beaten Louisville earlier in the season, but they'd won 14 in a row. And I'm talking in the Big Ten. That's a huge deal. Huge deal. To win 14 in a row. And because the competition is so incredibly difficult. Just difficult. And I thought at that point, wow. They got something going on here. And you could just tell that they had something going on. It was very impressive that what they were doing. You could just tell. Like, okay. And when they got to the Final Four, they had beaten Louisville, they had beaten Nebraska, but they had lost to Pitt down there. Okay. Which happens. That happens. That was the one. There was one where you kind of sat back and went, you're like, and their confidence going down there was tremendous. Because, we'd had the coaches on, Megan and Brian, to go with Katie. We'd had all of them on during the coaches show on Thursday night. So I talked with all of them along the way. And you could just tell there was a confidence about this team, the way they were playing, especially when I talked to Brian the last time. You could just tell they couldn't wait to get down there to Louisville. And Nebraska, to be honest with you, Nebraska won the first two, and the first set was nip-tuck, back forth, and Penn State led the thing 20. I talked about this Friday. Penn State led it 23-21. You're like, okay, come on, one more. And boom, Nebraska won 4 straight points. Then the second set, you're like, Penn State, they didn't look like Penn State. And it ended so late, I went to sleep, and they reverse swept them. And Jess Merzick caught fire. It was really incredibly impressive. Incredible. And so, then yesterday, they won in 4, but to be honest with you, they should have swept them, to be honest with you. Because they were playing great. The second set, they're playing great, and all of a sudden at the end, Louisville finally caught a little fire and got something done. But Penn State, even for the most part, dominated the second set. But then sets 3 and 4, they just, to be honest with you, on that stage, that was impressive. Really, really impressive. Wow. Great weekend.
I was impressed at not letting that second game get to them, because I think it was 10 match points, and then Louisville finally won that game 32-30, I think it was, 34-32, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And, even for, you would think, even for a little bit of the next game, it might affect him. It barely affected him at all. That was pretty impressive.
No, they were, again, not fazed by anything. You know, and I think that's important, not fazed by it at all. I mean, they weren't fazed by the Nebraska thing. Why do you think they're going to get fazed by losing the second set? I mean, this is the mental makeup of the team. Great team, well put together, really well coached, and national champions. In a sport that, you know, there's so many sports that Penn State fans cherish. Women's volleyball is one of them. So, what a great day. Great day. Yeah, you just enjoy stuff like that just, you know, you just enjoy it. And I thought it was just one of those great, enjoyable moments.
I think people don't realize, you know, women's basketball gets a lot of the press, you know, and making great strides, you know, viewerships and stuff. And women's volleyball is right up there.
Oh, my goodness. No, the ratings for this are going to be great. The ratings for this are going to be off the charts. They really are. They're going to be great. I mean, that's, you know, they put it on ABC. Love it. I mean, really fabulous. I said they're going to absolutely love it. But congratulations to them. Talk about earning your title. They earned it. They earned it. Makes it very special. It really does. Makes it really special. So. All right. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about Saturday, any questions about the next step forward or anything like that, but I'll answer them all. Why not? We can have fun. We're off the next couple of days, by the way. So I was complaining about getting a babysitter for tomorrow, and I said, okay, fine, enough's enough. Take the day off. Go ahead.
Now, see, I'm good for this week. My aunt's home for Christmas.
Oh, really?
It's it's when they go back to Florida that I have a little bit of problems.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Don't need that.
I can teach her how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She can sit at home.
Oh.
Well, my wife's off. I'm making a joke.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm dealing with the suit here. The kid can feed itself. Like, what? Hey, by the way, did you see the picture of Kevin and Dave Ritchie sitting together?
At the hockey game, I did.
Yeah, that's great. Great to know he's back. That's great. I guess next week will be their first game back together, so that'll be really cool. You know.
Well, I have no visual evidence that the suit made it back, so.
Ooh. No offense, kind of sounds ominous.
You know, well, the Chief could have had enough by the third period.
We probably had enough when they walked in together. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. But great weekend all the way around. And, yeah, men's basketball. And like I said, I'm going to do the men's game on Sunday. And people have asked me, like, what are you going to do? I'm like, no. So what I've got is Sunday men's basketball, Sunday night travel. Monday, of course, in Phoenix. Suit said, when are you going to Pahonix? I'm like, oh, jeez, where do we find these people? And so it'll be Sunday basketball, Sunday night travel, Okay, Fast Friday, do the pregame with James on Monday. Tuesday, the Fiesta Bowl. Wednesday, New Year's Day, travel back. Thursday, basketball with Northwestern. Sunday, the 5th, basketball with Indiana, and then we'll see if there's another football game.
Did you guys see about the Oil Jets coming to the SU game, or the SMU game by chance?
You know, it's funny. I heard about it, but I heard about it from Ron Moeller. And the reason I heard about it from Ron Moeller is that he went down to the field with, like 8 minutes to go in the game. And when he went down there, he said he ran into a guy who's a big donor for SMU. Like, okay. And he said that, he says, oh, hey, really sorry about how everything went today, whatever, just being, nice and classy, right? And he said, well, I don't know, I just got here. So our plane was diverted.
What's the big booster's name? Bill Johnson, I believe?
That I don't know.
Whatever the big booster was, his plane got diverted to Williamsport. Craig James was on it. There was a picture online of all them, they had to take a party bus over, or they took a party bus over from Williamsport to State College, and by the time it got there, it was already 21-0.
Well, they probably were listening to us on the radio.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that increased our ratings. All right. Well, yeah, it's an interesting time, but it's also one of those where, like the next couple of days are great for the players because they went earlier yesterday. Yesterday's practice was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So they were done by 2, maybe 5 after 2, something like that, which meant the players could go home. And so the players, if they have the ability to go home, not all of them do, but if they have the ability to go home, they're home today and tomorrow. But then they have to be back and report on Christmas Day because they do have a practice on Christmas Day. Then, of course, Thursday will be off. Friday will be a full practice, but it's going to be in the morning. Saturday will be a full practice. That also will be in the morning. And then they'll fly to Sky Harbor, fly to Phoenix on Saturday. And then they'll do a walkthrough Sunday, and then the game is on Tuesday. Or, actually, the Fast Friday will be Monday, then the game's on Tuesday. So, I mean, that's the schedule.
Do you guys have to go out of Harrisburg for this West Coast trip?
I'm guessing they are going out of Harrisburg. I am going commercially.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're going from the basketball game.
Right. So I'm going to go to Chicago and then to Phoenix, then come back. Same thing. Phoenix, O'Hare, back here on New Year's Day.
You should have ran down the steps quick, and maybe one of the SMU donors would have left you a jet.
I don't think they were in the mood to give me a ride.
I'm sure it's oil money. They probably have a spare one.
Oh, cruel. Let me quickly say this about every time we have these scenarios where a team loses, the post-mortem is always that they didn't belong. Right? Indiana lost to Notre Dame, didn't belong. SMU lost to Penn State, didn't belong. Right? Well, excuse me, but can you say that about Tennessee?
It's funny how all that stopped after Tennessee got mollywopped.
Right. Exactly. Like Lane Kiffin's, he's kind of, it's interesting when you're around Lane Kiffin, he defines boring. Okay? He's in a press conference. He's dull. Like, okay, which is fine. I had no problem with that. Everybody's, but like on Twitter, he has this other personality. Well, let me put it this way. He's like throwing a couple things out there. You should have won more games. All right. Nobody ever gets back to that part. Maybe you should have won a couple more games.
All this talk, it's amazing to me. Everybody, it's like that Alabama-Oklahoma game did not happen.
I know. And Oklahoma took them apart. But this is what I tell people all the time. Before Jack and I went in on Saturday, some people were talking about some of the comments being made in Pittsburgh about Penn State, about the atmosphere at Beaver Stadium, about maybe, they may only be 70,000 people there, and so on and so forth, right? And I looked at everybody and I said, why do you listen to it? I said, you have to understand, who cares what they think? I said, who cares? I said, do you think I listen to any of these people? I listen to nobody. I mean, is there a show I listen to? Yeah, I'll be honest with you. The show I listen to all the time, because I just flat out enjoy it, is Full Ride with Rick Neuheisel and Chris Childers on Sirius. But everybody else, I don't listen to them. Why? I don't care what they think. I said, why do you guys care what they think? I said, do they have a vote on the committee? No. I said, their opinion is as valuable as yours. I said, and please don't tell me they're well informed. They're sitting in a studio. I mean, come on. They're not out there getting their hands dirty, going to practices or things like that, or really following a team, whatever. They're getting fed stuff all the time. Come on. Really?
I think ESPN at this point has to announce that they have the SEC contract now, because between Herb Street and Sean McDonough on the Notre Dame Indiana game and
Sean, to be honest with you, when Sean gives an opinion, that really is Sean's opinion.
Oh, I'm sure it is, but
Sean, I have great respect for Sean. So
but to state that the basically the SEC is head and shoulders above the Big Ten as well is ridiculous, flat out ridiculous.
Well, I can say this: Tennessee's not head and shoulders above Ohio State.
I mean, if Notre Dame plays to its capabilities and Indiana plays to its capabilities, I mean, all these playoffs have blowouts. I think somebody said the wild card games in the NFL last year were 3-score games. Yeah.
Oh, remember when the Eagles played Tampa Bay?
Yeah.
The first time through, and Tampa Bay blew them out 38-5-7. It's just the way it is. I mean, you're really, really good. And what did I say on Friday? What was the area that was going to be incredibly problematic for Indiana?
The front.
Their offensive line against Notre Dame's defensive line. I said they're not going to be able to handle them. It's just the way it is. That doesn't take away from Indiana having a great season. They did. They had a great season. Okay. They had a great season.
And I bet Kurt Cignetti gets that fixed in the offseason. I wouldn't bet against it. How's that?
I wouldn't either. And something that's important, I mean, is that, there's only so much you can fix in your first offseason. Well, guess what? You can fix a lot in the second offseason. Okay? And get to work on that with the transfer portal. He's a heck of a coach. Yeah, and they did a heck of a job this year, and they had a terrific season. And that's my opinion. And I think that is to the credit of everybody that's there. And, and credit where credit's due. I mean, they went out and won the games that were in front of them. They went 11-1. Right? And the problem is the Tennessee thing against Ohio State. was one of those moments for the SEC, like, because you could tell all season long the SEC was really good, but you kind of get the feeling like, exactly how good are they? Most years, to their credit, they're head and shoulders, they're outstanding, they're whatever. This wasn't one of those years.
No, and I think this is where they kind of they pay for expanding because they might be too deep at this point.
Yeah, but look, the Big Ten's deep too. Oregon's in there, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not arguing that point, but I just
right.
think I think with their, I think the 9-game schedule hurts them, and I think that's where that comes into play as well.
Well, they play an 8-game schedule.
8-game schedule, I mean.
Right. Yeah. See, the depth plays a huge role. That's why Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are justified, in my opinion, that in a 14-team playoff, or if they do that, the 14-team playoff, I think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are justified saying, hey, we want 4 automatic qualifiers. Because they're playing in the 2 deepest leagues in the country.
Yeah.
You got 8 teams left. 5 of them are Big Ten SEC. All right? And 3 of the 5 won their way to get to that point. The other 2 were automatic qualifiers. Well, Merry Christmas to all of you. Be safe. Todd, Merry Christmas to you and your wonderful family.
Back at you. Merry Christmas to you and yours, Steve.
We will be back on Thursday with a show. Todd will feverishly be working on guests for Thursday and Friday. Well, the Boise State play-by-play guy used to do Bucknell.
That is correct. Bob Beeler. I got a little kick out of that. He was the play-by-play guy when I first started.
Yep.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
The holidays are a time of year to celebrate and reflect. Reflect on the past year, a year filled with challenges and uncertainty. Uncertainty that bred resilience and hope. Hope for healing, change, new beginnings, and unity. United as one people, one community, by one mission. To safeguard and protect what matters most. From all of us at Purdy Insurance, we wish you health, happiness, and joy this holiday season and success in the new year.